Welcome back, everyone, to Letters of Intent, the podcast for risk takers and deal makers. I'm Pankaj Raval, founder of Carbon Law Group.
And I'm Sahil, corporate attorney here at Carbon. Today's guest is someone I've known for years, a friend, a creative powerhouse, and one of the sharpest legal minds in entertainment.
She's a veteran legal executive with time at Netflix and MRC, helping shape film and television deals across the world. She's also a writer, a producer, and someone who refuses to stay in one lane.
Whether she's drafting contracts or producing films, she brings the same passion and purpose to her work and executes with intention.
So today we're unpacking the journey, the pivots, the risks, and what it means to lead with both legal acumen and creative vision.
London, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I am so excited to learn more about your story.
I'm so excited to be here.
And I wanted to start off, London, with you grew up in the Windsor Hills View Park neighborhood. I wanted to find out, what was it like growing up there? What were your early creative influences? Was there anyone in entertainment or law when you were growing up that inspired you?
You know, that's so interesting you mentioned that, because it's so funny. I think hindsight is 2020 now, that like looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many creatives that have come from this neighborhood, like Issa Rae and Regina King. And I don't think we like really realized, you know, like, oh, there's people, like when people were talking about View Park, Windsor Hills, it wasn't really like on the map in that way. Major shout out to Issa Rae for like making our little neighborhood kind of like on the map. But essentially it was like my creative influences were like, I don't know, like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and what else? Martin Lawrence, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so these were people that weren't like from LA. And so they were just like really like funny people. And then of course, like when I saw Clueless, this feels like close, at least tangentially to LA. And so, you know, I feel like those were kind of like my influences early on. And now that I'm looking back though, I'm like, you know what? It's actually my family members that were really funny. Like, a lot of the things that I write or gravitate towards are, you know, things that feel familiar. So just like my upbringing, like if I see someone that reminds me of my grandmother or my mom, or, you know, I recently watched Forever on Netflix, and I don't know if you guys have saw that series, but I guess Mara Brock-Akil would definitely be someone that kind of influenced my upbringing, in the sense that her show Girlfriends, that I was just like, oh, wow, I want to be like these women. I want to like be like Joan and very powerful. And it's really hard to find like a lot of, you know, Black females on screen that you feel like you relate to growing up, you know what I mean? So I think at the time it was just like, okay, seeing something like that was probably, I guess, the stuff that I would feel like influences me. But Forever, that show, I feel like will influence the next generation, because it specifically captures like my neighborhood and the feeling of growing up in LA while being young and Black.
Mm-hmm.
So what drew you, what came first, law or entertainment? Like what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Definitely entertainment. If you told me I was going to be a lawyer in entertainment, that was not going to be the case. I watched Entourage, and that was like my favorite show. I would like rewatch that over and over. And I was like, oh, I want to be the next Ari, but I want to be the female version, you know? And a lot of my friends growing up in LA, a lot of them wanted to be actors or work in the industry on a producer or director level. And so I was like, oh, they're going to need an agent in terms of like, you know, representing them. I didn't even really know that entertainment law was kind of like a thing. I thought of lawyers as just like the people that go to court, etc. But it wasn't until I majored in rhetoric that I realized, oh, there's transactional attorneys. Actually, Ari Emanuel went to law school. So maybe I should go to law school. You know what I mean? And actually, so that I could at least maybe not be an entertainment lawyer, but at least be kind of armed with the lingo and the protections of knowing the law. And that way I could just be better armed. Because as a woman, you're just always trying to think of, okay, what's going to give you the next edge? And I felt like, okay, if I go to law school, I will probably still become an agent. And CAA was like the dream at the time. My third year of law school, I interned at CAA, and I was just like thinking, you know, I even got offered an assistant job there, their motion picture film finance team. And I thought it was the lane I was going to go. But of course, graduating with student law debt, I can't afford that like $27,000 salary. So I was just like, guys, I can't live off of this. But, and I don't even know if the personality fits my personality, you know, being an agent. Like I'm not that intense. I'm usually, to this day, I can't avoid smiling. And so my family was always like, are you sure you want to be a lawyer? Because you still are going to have to be like, you're a little too accommodating to be a lawyer. And I was just like, no, I'm going to make my lane. And that's how I kind of discovered like, oh, you could do entertainment law, because a lot of the agents were doing deals with the lawyers on the other end. And so that's how I kind of discovered.
Well, I
That's
want to
amazing.
touch on that because you found your way. You didn't just become an entertainment lawyer. You became an entertainment lawyer at the highest level at Netflix and now at MRC. And so I would love to hear about that journey. I mean, so at some point you're deciding, okay, it's not going to make sense for me to go the agent route, but I want to go the entertainment law route. And now to get your foot in the door at a place like Netflix, very difficult, very competitive. And especially, I mean, the same goes for MRC. So how did you navigate your career?
I think I was just very intentional. And it's funny because it wasn't until 2017 that I was like, I want to work for Netflix specifically. I was in New York, living in New York, and I was working in-house for an advertising company. And I discovered that, I think I've reached my ceiling here at this advertising, working in-house. And also I want to move back to LA. But I don't want to just move to another in-house position at an advertising agency or anything like that. I want to pursue this dream of working in film. And that was because at the time in 2017 was kind of like, I was realizing, I'm in my 30s. I was like, okay, I'm getting to this point where if I don't really like chase what I really want to do, which is basically produce some of the projects that I've been writing on the side, then I'm never going to do it. And I'm only getting older, not younger. And so it's just kind of like a little bit of a fearless thing that came with me of like, well, I have nothing to lose. And I had to be very intentional about, okay, my skill set is being a lawyer. So of course I'm going to apply for entertainment legal jobs, but film doesn't necessarily translate to advertising, right? And so I had to kind of like sell myself and the skill set that I learned as an in-house and 7 rounds of interviews later, I finally got the job. But I think it was them taking a risk on me. And at the time, they were a company that was kind of like, oh, we're going to kind of basically home raise our lawyers. So as long as you have a legal skill set and you're very passionate, like passion is definitely one of the highest values, and believing in transparency, et cetera, and a willingness to kind of like do anything, like there's no job too small or too big, then I think they luckily took a chance on me. And I was employee number 8 on that team that grew to 66 people by the time I left. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was
That is
amazing.
crazy. That's amazing. Yeah, I would love to. I want to hear more about this. Your time at Netflix and also MRC. But I was also like intrigued by your story about CAA becoming an agent, because actually I resonate with that because I moved out to LA and did entertainment law, worked at an small entertainment firm. And I was thinking about actually becoming an agent as well. I was like, oh, this sounds cool. I think it also inspired by Entourage. I watched Entourage growing up and I loved it, and I was like, yeah, that'll be fun. I could, and I love music. So I wanted to become a music agent. But then I was talking to people in doing it. They're like, no, stay as a lawyer. I think you'll be happier. So I don't know. What was it about like being an agent that ended up turning you off? Was there something about it that you're like, you know what? Was it or the student debt? Because I know, I didn't also want to start at the bottom, but was there something about it that you felt like, you know what, maybe being a lawyer just makes more sense?
Yeah, it was something about, it wasn't even starting at the bottom. Like I'm happy to make my dues or pay my dues, because I realized after law school, and I don't know if this is you guys' experience, but I feel like law school really taught me more so to just be a judge than a lawyer, because I'm like evaluating case law and learning rules. And so I needed to learn how to apply them, right? I needed to like really understand the deal making structure. So I definitely recognized that I needed to start at the bottom in some capacity. It's just more of the like financial aspect. I was just like, I don't literally know how I'm going to survive in LA off of this amount. So I just don't think it was kind of like something that was made for me. But also it wasn't just that. It was like, I could technically like move back in with my parents and then grind it out that way. And some of my friends did do that, right? For me, I was just kind of like, I don't know, maybe I was misguided at the time, because I feel like a lot of people are making that. The people that did make that sacrifice, they're like, they're like partners at the agencies now, and it's exciting. But I did sense that a piece of my personality probably wasn't going to be the personality that was going to thrive at the agency, right? Like I am someone that just wants to collaborate and really figure out like how to get the deal done. And I felt like at the time, at least, I don't know if this has changed, but at the time I felt like, oh, I'm being a shark and you're kind of just like end all be all. And I don't know if that was necessarily who I was at the time. Like I just didn't have enough, I don't know. In that sense, I don't think my personality fit that.
But London, you actually did make the leap into the creative world, which is remarkable. I mean,
Yes.
you built like an amazing legal career at Netflix, MRC, and then you found your way into producing and screenwriting. And so I did want to ask you, what did you learn about producing? You produced films like Thick House, Lovelock, The Shady Brunch. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of relates to willing to do any and everything and have like no job be too big or too small, right? Like, so at the time, a friend of mine was starting a production company and she had this partnership with the Shade Room who had this overall deal with Facebook Watch. And her being someone that was like starting at the bottom, she's young. I just want to work with people that I like and that who have a passion for this. She basically took a chance on me because I said, hey, I want to produce. I recognize that I'm an entertainment lawyer, but I like know the deal structures from working at Netflix. And so while I was at Netflix, I was able to produce these shows and use vacation days. I was very honest and transparent with my boss. And luckily the culture is, as long as you're kind of like transparent, you can kind of do other things and use your vacation days accordingly, right? And so each season of the show only required 8 days off at a time. So I was able to use 8 days of vacation and produce a show. And
Wow.
Amazing.
that was 8 episodes. And so it's really just like, how much do you want to kind of like sacrifice? Like, instead of going on a trip, I was like using my vacation days to actually do work.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I just feel like sometimes you just got to do what needs to be done to get it done, right? And use your relationships. If your friends are in the industry, if they need help, it's kind of like, I was even willing to volunteer, but luckily she decided to pay me because she was like, wait, I actually see your value. But it's not always going to be the case. And I feel like you have to just make your way in some way.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, that's like ultimate hustle. And I love that. And I love that about like LA, like people I meet in LA, it's like, it's hustling, right? Like you're looking for opportunities all the time. Even Sahil, you and I were chatting last night about that quote about like sometimes opportunities whisper, right? And,
Yes.
and I think it's so true that, it sounds like, London, you found this opportunity through your, building your relationships and network, and you were able to kind of try this new world of producing, which you always wanted to do. So I love the fact that, you chased it, you figured out a way, right? You had to use your vacation days. Some people would go, to Hawaii. You decided to do this, production. And I mean, now you have your producer credit and you can leverage that in fun ways. So that's amazing.
Well, on that note, tell us about 8 Degrees of the F-Boy. What was that about?
Yeah, so that was literally my first, I guess, voyage into filmmaking. I essentially wrote this script after a tough breakup. And this was like in 2018, this was like a crazy breakup. And that's when luckily Netflix relocated me to LA. I started this whole journey. And so it was 2020. There was this short film competition that was kind of for anyone and everyone. They were kind of like, oh, we're just looking for like new creative writers to join this writer's room. And it was called Create the Writer's Room. And so they were looking for like a 3-minute short. And, I felt like, oh, that's a very small ask. So why don't I just like self-finance something like this? I have this interesting story that was literally based on the breakup or inspired by. I wouldn't say based on because I definitely changed a lot just so that there was no issues legally. As an entertainment lawyer, you have to do that.
Protect the names.
Exactly. And then I reached out to my network of like, a lot of my friends, like I said, are actors. And so I reached out to them to kind of cast it up. We had our first, what do you call it? Table read. I guess we had our first table read at Netflix and after hours, of course. And that was exciting because I was just like, okay, I'm in this amazing space where all creatives exist. And I feel like I just need to make something. And I had the support of everyone there. And so, yeah, I had submitted it. I wrote the script first. Then they asked for the video version. I made it to that round. Then I made it to the third round. So top 10 finalists. Sadly, was not the top 3 because the top 3, I think, were the ones that got to join the writer's room or at least compete to join the writer's room. But it was my first voyage into that. And it was March. I will never forget this. It was March 2020. And I will always remember creating it and submitting it then because that was like International Women's Day right before the pandemic.
Wow.
So I know it was
That's
pretty
amazing.
insane.
Actually, I've heard you speak very eloquently about this Black stories and women's stories. And I wanted to explore that a little bit because it feels like that's a theme as well with your podcast, More Than a Lawyer, even though it centers around the experience of being a professional and being more than that, you know, having a multidimensional personality. But I do notice that I feel like there is, in a lot of your work, a theme of celebrating Black stories. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that to you?
Yeah, I think it's just a lot about, you know, as you grow up, you realize what's authentic to you is just like who you are, who the people that raised you are, and wanting to kind of gravitate towards those types of stories that show that complexity, right? I think seeing films growing up that didn't necessarily always show people in the way that I felt I could relate or were like family members or anything. Honestly, it wasn't until I heard Kanye West's Graduation that I was even like thinking outside the box of like, oh, he's articulate and educated. Someone that's like a hip hop artist. He's talking about stuff that I can relate to. He's talking about my college experience, right? Then it was seeing friends like Issa Rae like come out with Insecure and seeing like Lena Waithe come out with Chicago. Like, you know, these are shows and who they are. And I realized the reason I was gravitating towards their stories and really wanting to celebrate those works was because they were authentic and they were talking about stuff that they could relate to. And so I felt like, oh, what's my authentic voice? Because it's not necessarily my experience isn't exactly as theirs is either. And so I want to kind of tell the story that I feel relates to someone that's literally like me, you know? And I felt like more I was being honest with myself about what I was going through or what my experience was as being a professional trying to gravitate towards entertainment and work in that. I felt like that was a lot of the stories that people could relate to. And people were like, oh, I want to see that. And I was just like, really? That's interesting. Like, it wasn't until hearing feedback from people when I would share the stuff that I was writing. And at the end of the day, a writer can only write what they know if you really, unless you're doing a lot of research, right? And I felt like the stuff that I could actually write well was the stuff that I actually knew about. So a lot of the stuff that I gravitate towards or write is literally based on personal experience or inspired by personal experience and or my friends. Like a lot of people say I'm a social butterfly and I think that's the gift and the curse. But so I get to like hear a lot of different people's perspectives on a lot of things. And the more I would share, the more I would hear other people's experiences. I was like, oh, wow, we're all relating in some different way to each other, but it's not the exact same. And it's only you can tell your exact same story. So you might as well create that lane for that story because everybody else is going to tell their story. So why not be honest and tell yours, you know?
Yeah, I love that. It's so powerful, I think, what you're saying, because that's art too, right? You're conveying your own humanity, and it's our shared humanity that allows us to identify and empathize with it, that creates that emotional impression. You know, I would love to know a little bit more about going a little deeper in terms of finding your authentic voice. How did you go about that? What was your process of uncovering that authentic voice of yours? Because it's not easy. A lot of times there's a lot of stories, a lot of stuff, a lot of noise out there. How did you cut through all that noise to get to your authentic voice?
Well, you know, I was raised an only child, even though I do have siblings. And so because of that, you have a lot of time alone.
Be only child. Okay. I gotta figure
Yeah, I definitely feel like being an only child was kind of the gift and the curse, right? Because you're alone with your own thoughts a lot. You know, for me, TV was kind of my therapy, right? You know, after homework, et cetera, I would come home. My guilty pleasure was being able to watch something. And it was like, oh, okay, I'm also processing my day. And it's like, oh, I would do spec scripts on shows like A Different World. And when I was in college, you know, I'm not in HBCU. I went to Berkeley. I was on the Afro floor my freshman year. And I was like, oh, there's some similarities to A Different World, but not exactly. And so I would basically create characters off of my friends at school. Awesome. Yeah. And so I just realized my friends were generous enough to actually take me up on reading my scripts and playing the characters too. And so the more I got input from them, that it was actually interesting and entertaining, the more I was like, oh, maybe I do have a voice. And then I met one of my very dear friends, Amber. We met in our our year of law school, our first day, and we became roommates our second year of law school. We wrote a script together during law school as a way of kind of escape, because we realized like we have to know the law, but it could be very isolating, right? Like being in the library all day. And so we just had this creative outlet. Like we both came from a space of wanting to get our voices out there. And I think also being a lawyer helps too, right? Because you're always having to have your own voice, like share your perspective on one side, or the other, and like why a deal should close at this amount or not. And so I just think getting more comfortable in my own skin just really helped me find my own voice. And then just getting the reception when people would start agreeing with me, or if they didn't, and it's like I could back it up of like why I felt like this was interesting or not, then I feel like that's what helps me. But it's still a process, right? I still feel like I'm still gaining my own voice.
Of course.
Being an artist, how does it affect your deal making style? Because I imagine you're dealing with complex and high stakes deals. How does being an artist affect the way that you make deals?
Or are you able to separate them?
Right.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that because, I'm on the studio side, but I can also always sympathize with the talent lawyers when they're trying to make a case for their clients. And at the end of the day, I feel like to make a good deal, you both have to feel like you are giving up something, right? Like they're going to make some interesting arguments. Some of them will land with me and some of them won't. It's funny. I tell my bosses both at MRC and at Netflix prior that, I can understand they make this case. Da, da, da. Then they would challenge that to me. And for whatever reason, it's usually who makes the more influential, persuasive argument is the one that wins at the end of the day, right? And so I feel like, yes, although I sympathize with a lot of the talent lawyers, basically negotiation tactics and also their points, sometimes it's just wrong or, just based on experience and also based on precedent. And then sometimes it's just right. And you're just like, okay, well, let me take that up the chain because I actually do agree with you. So I feel like it's fair if we do meet in the middle, So it's just a matter of just using your own intuition and also based on experience, you'll start to see what's industry standard and customary and what's not. And so sometimes it's funny when people try to use certain tactics as a strategy to negotiate against you, like when they're yelling or, using profanity. Oh, usually they have no case and they're just trying to intimidate you.
Right.
But if they're actually using logic and, precedent or something to where I can actually work with them, I'm willing to work, right? Because I want this to be collaborative. I want their client to actually enjoy being on set and filming this project. I don't want it to feel like it was a bloodbath. I just feel like that shouldn't be what we're in the business for. We're in the business to entertain and make amazing projects that I want their clients and our studio to feel excited about. And so it's literally cutting to it at the end of the day of what is it going to take to get this deal done and why? And if it's a realistic ask, then I will do my best to try to make it happen, Yeah.
I'm intrigued. I think we could probably talk another 2 hours on this, but being on both sides of the deals too, I think you have a really unique perspective because being on the studio side and also producing things, I was wondering, is there something you've seen like a negotiating style or technique or approach that you feel like you've seen from the studio side that you feel like maybe you've applied that you've used on your maybe advocating for yourself on the other side, or something that just really like you felt like worked well? There's so many different terms people can apply and so many different styles.
Yeah.
Do you have anything come to mind there?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it really does come down to what's the budget, right? If you're negotiating a financial aspect of the deal, it literally is what's budgeted. And what I love is that working at both Netflix and MRC is I've learned about backend and I've learned about buyouts, right? So it's not just like the fixed compensation that's going to be the one that appeals to me. It's going to also be equity in the deal. I feel like that type of deal structure is something that I gravitate towards on the talent side. And then also on the deal making side, I use as a way to sweeten the deal if I don't have the budget to give them the high 7-figure, 8-figure deals that everybody's talent thinks that they deserve.
Yeah. Could you give us an example? I mean, that makes perfect sense. And you've been hearing a little bit about that, points on the back end, things like that. Like, can you tell us a little bit more about what that means just for listeners who are not familiar with the entertainment industry? Like, what does that look like? What do you hear in terms of like maybe some asks based on different budgets of films? I know it goes across the board, but if you have any insights into that, yeah.
Yeah, I guess another name for it is like contingent compensation. It's like compensation that's contingent on it either being released and having this much box office ticket sales, or it could be a buyout because it's on a streaming service. And it's all a risk, right? You don't know how something's going to perform. What's interesting is thinking about those amazing deals like Slumdog Millionaire or Get Out, which were true indies made at like, I think Slumdog Millionaire was made with what, $1 million or something, but a crazy box office. Or like Get Out, I know was made at 4.5 million and over 250 million domestic or something. Right. So it's just literally thinking about, oh, there's a potential upswing here. If I literally take less upfront compensation and ask for a point a piece, even 1% of that 250 million upswing would have been amazing. Right. So it's really like betting on yourself, and as talent and also as a studio, it's showing them that, hey, you know, we're all incentivized to make an amazing piece of work because we feel like this is something that's going to really be appealing to the masses. And you don't always go into it with that thinking, but you think like, if I connect to this story, there has to be someone else that connects to the story, right? And so I feel when you decide like, hey, you can give me maybe scale, whatever the guild minimums are for this, whether it's a PGA, DGA, SAG, Writers Guild, whatever, you can give me scale, but I want a piece of that back end. So I want a piece of the net profits, you know, because that's when you're really like having the chance to make even more than you could make as like upfront fee, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I have a question about like just working with Netflix, because I've actually got funny enough, someone came to me recently trying to produce something, and she just sold one film to Netflix. I mean, it's all public. Geetha Malik is the director. The movie, I forget the name now, but they asked me to help them, you know, try to pitch to other investors to invest in their next project. But if someone's coming to Netflix, do you have any tips on how they position themselves to be most successful with the pitch to Netflix?
Ooh, that's a great question. I feel like I get that asked a lot. Just, you know, from friends that are like, everybody wants to submit to them, right? I think, you know, this day and age, you know, everybody has a story, right? And everything could seem interesting. At the end of the day, I think what's successful and what's going to gravitate is if you have a clear vision of the story, right? And a clear idea of the world that it's being created in, a clear, like if you have attached talent or attached filmmaker, director, I think the more pieces you can put together and show that there's an actual clear idea of what you want to make and why, it's really answering the question of why Netflix, why you, why now? Those three questions are usually kind of the questions they're going to be asking. And if you can articulate those answers and actually have like clear direction in that, I think there's always a shot, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, everybody's looking for the next amazing thing. Like, I don't know about you guys, I'm on the film side, but Love Island unscripted, like that is, I'm just like, it's crazy.
I'm addicted.
Addicted.
Yeah. I watch it with Aish
all
every
the
day.
time, right?
Like, there are more than 30 episodes in this season.
Literally every day I get off work and I'm like, why is that my highlight and my treat? And it's like they've found a format that works not only for US, but globally, right? You have the UK version, the Australia version, you have the South Africa version. So it's like for TV shows, if you can appeal globally, I think for streamers, that's it, right? Because everybody wants something that's going to appeal globally. Film, you know, it may not appeal globally, but for whatever reason, people will watch a non-globally appealing film globally more often than a series. Yeah. And so I just feel like if you could find a formatted show that works across the board, that's your sweet spot. And then if you can also, for a film, just have a clear direction on your story that maybe it's so focused, like Forever is a series, but that's globally appealing, even though it's very specifically about LA and like Hollywood Hills. Like it feels like it's very set, but I think people can relate to the underlying values and to the overarching themes of the story, right? And I think people can relate. It's like first loves. We all relate to that. It's like, you know, different class of people dating. I think some people can relate to that. And also it's appealing to see like attractive people on screen, right? So
yeah, right. Exactly.
As we know, Love Island. Love Island.
I think that's what Love Island really did.
Yeah, it's such a good example, and I think it's such a good example too of an IP that's getting built. Right, you have so many episodes you can build out, and that kind of brings me to my next question: is when people are thinking about selling their film, on one hand, you're a filmmaker, you want to sell your individual film, but what's the business model on the studio side? Is the studios basically consolidating a library and licensing it? Is that the real value here? Or are they looking to make money off of individual films?
That's an interesting question. I feel like, here's the thing. If a studio's buying your film, or not buying it, but they can license it. But if they're making it, if they're co-financing or financing it, they're not going to just want to make it so that you can own it and license it elsewhere, right? So I think they're incentivized to make it for you, like give you that certain budget because they know it's going to be exclusive to them. It's going to live on their service as a streamer or, theatrically, whatever. But if they're licensing it, it could just be like, sometimes studios are just like, let's just get some points on the board. So if it's like, it has really cool attachment cast and it's like, oh, this looks like there's going to be a little bit of a zeitgeist, or it's just really interesting and it was a very competitive project. If we're able to carve out kind of a term for us to have it on our streaming service, why not? Right? Because here's the thing. You have two different ways of looking at it. So like, as you guys know, we had the SAG and WGA strikes in 2023, I believe. So then there was kind of like a halt at content. Like that whole year, it felt like a lot of stuff wasn't being made. Even at MRC, we had a lot of stuff in development. And then when we would try to make it, it was, we have to wait till the strikes are over. But it's like, we want to get some stuff made, right? And our distributing partners, they were looking for stuff. So they were acquiring. They were doing license deals for just kind of like anything to kind of like have some new content on their service. But, now that the strike is over, it's like, maybe they're more incentivized to own it because if they owned a show like, let's say, Love Island, they know that, sometimes we may have different viewers or we may have the same viewers, but people will use both services, like you say, like a Hulu and a Netflix or a Hulu Peacock, whatever. It's as long as we have a little piece of that sliver of that, zeitgeist, we're fine. And so we're okay with a license, whether it's a 25-year term, short term, whatever the case may be. But it just depends on kind of like what's the actual property that they're looking to either make or to license and like what's the appeal.
So, well, for anyone who's listening, you just heard an artist talk numbers. You heard an attorney talk about creative. For anyone who's listening and wants to be a part of both worlds, I think, London, you are a perfect example and an inspiration. Law and art, business, creative vision. This conversation is proof that you don't have to pick just one. You can build your own lane. For everyone who's listening, I will drop all of London's information in the show notes. London, where can people find you?
Well, definitely on social media. So my Instagram, legally_London Bridges. And then, of course, LinkedIn. Feel free to hit me up. I know people hit me up there. I also have a website called morethanalawyerpodcast.com. That's for my podcast. You can reach me either directly through there as well. And yeah, I'm excited to see what's being made, to work with people, to be collaborative. A wise woman said, work across, not vertical. And it's like, you guys come and you grow together. And so that's what I'm all about. So I'm always like, it sounds very trite, but like, basically, let's just like collaborate and work together. I think some of the best teams, like the Ryan Cooglers of the world, who are still working with their same team from film school. I'm like, oh yeah. That's what I'm about.
It's incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So London, it's been amazing having you on. You've shared such valuable insights and advice for our listeners. And I hope you guys, reach out, stay in touch. Hopefully we'll have you again in the future as, you talk about your next big project or, that next thing you're doing. And if anyone is looking for more information, please drop us a comment. We always appreciate the likes and the shares of this podcast. It helps us continue to produce more of this content. And let us know what else you're looking for. Let us know what other information you want to hear, what other insights you want from our guests, because we want to make this as useful as possible to our listeners. With that said, thank you again, London, so much from the bottom of our hearts. We really appreciate it. And this is Letters of Intent. Until next time, have a wonderful day and keep on deal making and risk taking.